what you hear is one of the officers says, ask, do you have gloves? That statement was mainly because they had seen Cameron and they had blood on him. And so they wanted to touch him, of course, but they wanted to make sure they had gloves. But if you listen to it, within seconds, the shooting started. There's nothing in there that says get up or go down or keep your hands where we can see them. Don't reach forward. Anything of that nature that will give you a clue that he had acted in a way to jeopardize the police. We don't have any of that. All we really have is a statement to the effect, keep your hands up. Next thing we hear is an officer saying, I need to get some gloves. And then within seconds, you hear shooting take place. Nothing that Cameron was doing that would support their feeling a justification for using deadly force. Okay? Okay.
That's it.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, of course, if anybody has any questions, we'd be happy to answer whatever questions you might have right now.
John Palmentary with KUIT. You mentioned that this interview, or the series of interviews with the deputies after the fact, created a story that supported their position. To also have a DA's document, are you saying that they're just basing it on those comments, or is the DA's office corroborating in any way law enforcement, supporting law enforcement, or something like that?
Well, certainly the DA is supporting law enforcement. I mean, that's pretty typical. I mean, that's not a surprising concept. The question is, did the DA himself or herself conduct any kind of independent investigation separate and apart from what the police said? Because if you did, you would have seen those tapes. If you listened to those tapes, you would not have heard what the police claimed they heard. So from our point of view, there wasn't an independent evaluation of the evidence on the part of the DA. The DA, now granted, the DA was looking to see whether there was a basis to prosecute the police. But I will tell you, if the police shot Cameron in the manner in which they did without any corroboration for the basis, that's criminal conduct, period. And whether or not the DA took that position, obviously did not. They basically didn't take that position, but we're not accepting the DA's position as being the correct word.
In your experience, should it be an agency outside of the county, somewhere removed from here, so it's not so close in proximity? Is there some other agency that would have been more acceptable?
I think that not necessarily, but I do think what's going on now is that the governor signed, I think he signed this piece of legislation that basically says that if there are unarmed police shootings, that they have to then be investigated by the Attorney General's office. That's a step, okay? In New York, they've done this. They have a separate agency. But look, I can't say just because another DA's office is looking at it that gives it more credibility than not. You got to keep in mind, these are all police officers. DA investigators are police officers. And I don't want to say that there's no way you can get at the truth, but I guess one has to look at it through the critical eye of who's doing the investigation. And now we hope from George Floyd, now that we've had George Floyd and we've had more indications that these shootings are so outrageous and that the public is being more critical and willing to be more critical, then you may wind up having more prosecutions. I certainly know in Alameda County that's taken place, where I'm from, and I'm certainly articulating and requesting police criminal investigations in other cities and other cases I'm involved in. But that's the same story. The DA typically supports the police, and it's really, unfortunately, up to us, or even up to us, but also outside groups, community groups. That's what protesting is about. It's like holding the district attorney and the police agency's feet to the fire. But that doesn't always happen, but you don't have to accept it. And unfortunately for us as civil rights lawyers, we don't have to accept it. And hopefully the DA will also see at some point that they should take another look at it, at what they get. Okay?
Tyler Hayden from The Independent. We asked the DA's office about the discrepancy that you guys have laid out, why you can't hear on the tape what they say the deputies said. And she blamed that discrepancy on technical issues. She said it was an equipment malfunction, that the mics didn't pick up what Cameron said, even though they had picked up with the other deputies, it said, what do you make of that? How do you respond to that?
Well, my feeling is that it was surprising that that would be a position when Mike works for everyone else. And I think there was even one indication one officer turned off the mic because to save a battery. So I get it as a justification. I don't accept that because malfunction is not a justification to excuse police officers' conduct. And no one else heard this. There were four different officers with audios. So if it was said, it should have been picked up even faintly, but it wasn't.
And even more so, okay, to go further on that, Tyler, it's a great question.
That's not just on microphone.
There was no time for what the district attorney and law enforcement alleges to have happened. There was no time, given the recording that we do have, and what we can hear very loud and clear, as the DA and law enforcement officers have said they could hear Cameron yelling that I have a gun. What we can hear loud and clear is law enforcement saying, hey, keep your hands up. We're going to need you to keep your hands up. We also hear them saying, maybe not even so loud and clear. It seems like a very personal question. We're going to need somebody to glove up.
Get some gloves on.
You got some gloves? You know, something that's said to somebody in very close proximity. Right after that, in about 3 seconds, we hear the shooting. Now, 3 seconds is not enough time, in our opinion, we argue, for someone reasonably to expect that law enforcement has given orders, several orders, in fact, for Cameron to get on the ground, for Cameron to comply and actually get on the ground, and then for Cameron to start to try and get up, and for law enforcement to give directions that you're not supposed to get up, and please don't get up, stay down. That would have taken several seconds, all of which were not available to have happened or to have had occurred, all right? It's just not possible. Their story and rendition that they've cooked up, and I'll say it just like that, they've cooked up, doesn't pass muster, and they have to be held accountable.
Can I say something to it? One of the other things that I think to address that issue is, well, one, microphones just don't work that way. You can't pick up one thing and then not something else from a few feet away. That's not right. But I think the other indicating thing relative to this is the blood evidence. If, in fact, he was on the ground and coming to charge at him and made a few steps, you would think that there would be cast-off blood spatter at the scene. All we see at the scene is blood pooling in a very small area where his body was at. That indicates he never moved. From the spot where he was shot to the spot where he was laying on the ground where he ultimately bled out is the same spot. So the blood evidence is in support of Mr. Burris's claims here as well.
And you would keep in mind also this, the distance wasn't that great. At best it's 10, 12 feet. Well, you know, if it's been working all the way up to then, and you could hear everything, well, is that a malfunction or is that being turned off? We don't know.
As a follow-up, there are 4 deputies. We've heard one of the recordings. You said maybe there's another one that was turned off. Have you heard the other 2, or are you in possession of the other 2 audio?
We are.
And do they show this the same thing that this does?
You can only really hear the shooting completely on one of the Coban audios, okay? And that is the one I suspect that had been released to TMZ. I don't know how they got it, but that is the audio finding or the audio file that you can hear stuff from. So it doesn't. None of the other audio files that we have support the district attorney or the law enforcement's conclusions either.